Good morning, everyone. Time check. With only 16 calendar days and only 5 legislative days left until the Department of Homeland Security is scheduled to shut down, House Republicans refuse to admit the dangerous collapse of their anti-immigrant grandstanding. Senate Republicans have told the House Republicans their bill cannot pass in the Senate, but still the House Republicans refuse to acknowledge the facts. Yesterday, every House Republican voted to block consideration of a clean Department of Homeland Security bill. On Tuesday, asked whether the House would take up DH spending, a bill, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy said, "Why do we have to? Why do we have to?" Here's why. Forcing the Department of Homeland Security to shut down endangers the American people, violating the sacred oath we take to support and defend. That's our oath of office. It's our first responsibility to protect the American people. Republicans should stop holding our Homeland Security hostage and bring forward a clean, long-term funding bill immediately. And instead of addressing these urgent priorities for our security, Republicans were bringing forward 2 deficit-exploding and permanent non-paid-for tax extender bills. Together, the bills increased the deficit by nearly $100 billion. Part of the same unpaid-for permanent tax extender package from the last Congress. Their package in total would increase the deficit by $800 billion, nearly $1 trillion. We need comprehensive tax reform that strengthens working families, promotes growth, and reduces the deficit. Also yesterday, the President submitted a draft for a new authorization for use of military force to Congress. It ends the outdated 2002 authorization that authorized the Iraq War. It restricts the use of ground troops. It includes other important limiting provisions as we go forward. Congress must now debate the draft, make our own positive proposals on how we protect the American people. And that's a bigger debate than the provisions of this AUMF. It's a debate that we should have been having since last August. We've been calling for the Speaker to let us bring something to the floor so that we could debate it. He said, no, next year, all that. And then he said, we can't act until we see something from the President. Well, that's not so. But now we have seen something from the President. And what we have to do is consider the threat, an evaluation of the threat. We have to see that it is in our national security interest to address that threat, and we have to make a judgment as to whether what the President has put forth is commensurate with the threat. Many of us believe that he's on the right path, but not necessarily committed to the words in his draft until we review them more carefully. You all know that the subjects are about timing, 3 years, about scope, about geography, unlimited in the President's proposal. There are members who have something to say, shall we say, about the timing and the geography. But the most serious part of it is the scope, and that would have an impact on timing and geography. And in what the President has put forth, there is a limitation. I'll just read it exactly. Under the section on limitations, the authority granted in subsection A does not authorize the use of United States Armed Forces in enduring offensive ground combat operations. That is a limitation. As you know, Senator McCain has a different view of giving unlimited authority to the President, and we have some in our caucus who proceed cautiously on that. And that's the debate that we will have. The first debate is about an evaluation of the threat and what arrows do we want to place in the President's quiver to deal with the threat. Yesterday, again, was a busy day. Well, not busy day in terms of getting things done around here, but nonetheless, we went to the floor to award the Congressional Gold Medal to the foot soldiers in the March on Selma. It was the legislation will award the gold medal when it is minted and presented, but we had the authorization for it yesterday. It was very interesting to hear the debate, very inspired, very praiseworthy of these people in the march on both sides of the aisle. Beautiful words on the floor about the foot soldiers, but those foot soldiers were marching for voting rights. And what was missing from all of that, as we heard tales of the courage of these marchers and violence that they suffered and at putting their lives at risk for the right to vote, was all very inspiring to hear the admiration for the foot soldiers. What we would like to have seen is a commitment to honor their work by giving a commitment to passing a Voting Rights Act. Yesterday, Judiciary Chairman Sensenbrenner and our ranking member John Conyers introduced the Bipartisan Voting Rights Act, and Mr. Sensenbrenner has been part of that bipartisan initiative all along. What we need is for the Speaker to bring the bill to the floor. We had hoped it would happen last year. They didn't bring the bill to the floor. It's just nice words on the floor are no substitute for enacting legislation that honors the sacrifice of those marchers, and that is to pass the Voting Rights Act. I'm very pleased that our Democratic Outreach and Engagement Task Force, led by Congressman Clyburn, who himself was part of the Civil Rights Movement, will be introducing legislation in the weeks ahead again. Hopefully by the time we all go to Selma, the first weekend in March, we'll have reason to be hopeful that the 50-year anniversary will be marked by a recommitment to the bill in the form of legislation passed in the Congress. I remind you that when we brought this forward in 06, when we wrote when the bill was written in 06 and put together, the vote in the Senate was unanimous. It was unanimous. In the House, only 33 people voted no. And that was a broader bill than what is being put forth now by Mr. Sensenbrenner and Mr. Conyers. So it has been bipartisan with great pride. Hopefully they will bring the bill to the floor soon again. With that, I'd be pleased to take any questions you have.
Madam Leader,
yes, sir.
what is the most likely end game of this DHS drama? Is a 2-month CR realistic?
But that's not an end. That's not an end. A 2-month CR is not an end. A 2-month CR is a continuation of uncertainty. And they ought to just face the fact that this president has the right to do what he has done by executive action. He has the right in the law by legal authority as well as by precedent of other presidents. And they want to overturn that using the Constitution and the rest and saying, therefore, they're not going to fund Homeland Security. The very first responsibility we have. It's hard to understand, but 2 months is nothing. And as their leader said, why do we have to do that? What was it? Why do we have to do that? So if they don't understand why we have to do that, they don't understand that maybe 100,000 people will be without pay. People who, more importantly, who should be at work protecting the American people. How would they like to be without pay because they're not protecting the American people by honoring their oath of office? So it is a 2 months is not an end. An end is to pass the bill clean, just as they did. Now, there's should be a recognition that 11 appropriations bills were arrived at in a bipartisan way that we supported. And not that I'm saying they were the bill I would have written, but they're a compromise, and they are to be respected for the bipartisanship and the work product that came forth. And those 11 have gone forward, and they are funded until the end of fiscal year, at the end of September. Only this one is the one that they've held up, and in December, when they decided to have a CR, a continuing resolution, the Cromnibus, cute, they said, oh, we're going to do it in January. And as I've said to you before, that was December. Oh, we're going to do it in January. January, Je suis Charlie, the whole world was galvanized around this issue of anti-terrorism and domestic safety and Homeland Security, except, again, the hermetically sealed chamber of the House of Representatives, where they came back and instead of just moving with it they dug in their heels. So 2 months, that's not a solution. That's not an end game. You'd have to ask them how they're going to face up to their responsibilities to support and defend the American people.
Leader,
To clarify your call for a clean bill, how is that different than saying you're willing to shut down Homeland Security to protect illegal immigrants from deportation?
Just as I said, perhaps you weren't listening. The president has the legal authority to do what he did. He has it by the law, and that has been recognized in court cases under other presidents. And so he has it under legislation, he has it under legal affirmation of that, and he has it under the precedent of other presidents. And that would be the biggest protectors were President Reagan and President George Herbert Walker Bush with their initiative over and above what the Congress did. So it's not a question of protecting illegal people in our country. It's a question of respecting the authority of the President of the United States to do. Did you hear anything from them on Reagan, President Bush, President George W. Bush, one of the greatest champions for immigration reform in our country when he did this? So this is not a reason, this is an excuse, and it's a very poor one to say, I'm not going to honor my first responsibility because I have a problem. And as the President has said, if you don't like what I have done, pass a bill. Pass a bill. So this is they're in a fix. We'll see how they get themselves out of it. We stand ready to work with them to protect the American people.
Madam Leader.
No, that's fine. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, about the Voting Rights Act, has there been any indication from Republican leadership that they'll bring the Sensenbrenner-Conyers bill to a vote? And more broadly, do you think the Republican Party is committed to getting this update done? And if not, why not?
Well, you have to ask them. But I don't see any evidence of that yet, because we had a whole, all of last year since the court acted incorrectly, in my view. Because they said our bill, the Voting Rights Act had, I don't know if they use the word obsolete, but that was the inference to be drawn. Well, we had just passed the bill overwhelmingly, and it became law in 2007. And this was, what, 13 when they did the court decision. So more than a year ago. So there has been plenty of opportunity. Now, don't get me wrong, this bill is a compromise. There are many out there who think we should go farther in correcting what the court did. But this is a compromise that we would have hoped that they would accept because it is a compromise. There is a drumbeat for doing a better voting rights bill. We're saying, let us get something passed, and with Chairman Sensenbrenner's support, who's been a champion on these issues, let us move forward. I don't know of any commitment from them. They certainly did not make any yesterday.
But do you think the Republican Party is interested in protecting voting rights?
I would certainly hope so. I would certainly hope so.
Madam Leader, on regards to the AUMF,
yes.
Talking to a lot of your members, I can't find one that's enthusiastic about this. They said that no repeal of the 2001 AUMF means that the president can essentially continue to operate the way they are. No geographic limitations, a real concern about how long Special Forces troops could be prolonged in the area. How do you sell this to your members?
Well, it's not a question of selling. We are all considering it together. So in our caucus, we build consensus and we listen to each other. Taking your points one at a time, in terms of the 2001 AUMF, the administration has said they didn't put it in this bill because it would be, this is a big package to move. So if we want to deal with that, we should deal with that separately. And that's something that we all have the prerogative to do. The second point on geography, well, some want to just confine it to Iraq and Syria, and we're saying, well, what about Jordan? You know, so then you get into naming countries, and that's a conversation we should have. There's, you know, I'm not saying one side is right, one side is wrong. It's a conversation that we need to have, but it's easier to say no limitation rather than start naming countries, and then you've left somebody out, giving a roadmap to the Al-Qaeda as to where they can go because we're not going. And that's a consideration. In terms of the timing, 3 years, I think the timing and the geography are related to the scope, because the scope is really the issue. And as I read the limitations are that this authority granted in subsection does not authorize the use of U.S. armed forces in enduring offensive ground combat operations. And so that is the conversation that we need to have. There is no question that there's no appetite in the public for us to go into any more war. There is no question that the American people have been scarred by the false premise of the Iraq War and the duration and the obligation we have to our veterans when they come home and the challenge it is to meet that. So when we proceed, as I say, when we give arrows in the president's quiver, we have to match it to the threat, its relationship to our national security, and how we can help other countries fight the fight with their boots on the ground, not our boots on the ground.
But your rise on the Iraq War issue is very well known within Democratic circles. You're an ardent critic of the Iraq War, very much to your benefit. How do you view this as
But I don't see,
leader?
I mean, what I was told when I opposed the Iraq War, quite frankly, by members of our caucus was, if you oppose this war, your future is ended in the leadership of the Democratic Party. They didn't understand. And I said, well, if I'm the only person to vote against the Iraq War, I will be the only person to vote against it, but my responsibility as ranking member on the Intelligence Committee tells me that the intelligence does not support the threat that they are putting forth to the American people as a justification to go into war. The intelligence did not support the threat. And I told that to my colleagues, and for this and other reasons, but their own reasons, many members. In fact, I think over 60% of the House Democrats opposed going into Iraq. So that I was already with at that point. But I was told, you vote for this, it's over for you, because this is blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, blah, blah, blah. If I'm the only one, I'm the only one, blah, blah, blah. But that was really more from my knowledge of the intelligence and the fact that that was being misrepresented to the public. Again, many people, maybe, I don't know, some Democrats voted for it, they have said, I wish I hadn't, but the fact is that in making judgments about language that we got yesterday, 9 o'clock in the morning, people want to review it, they want to see what it is, but it has to be proven to them. They don't start at a place of just show it to me and I'm there. It has to be proven to them that this is an evaluation of the threat, that this proposal is commensurate with the threat, and that it has limitations on the president. I don't ever remember a president sending legislation to the Congress to limit his power as commander-in-chief. So I think the administration has to be commended for that. And we have to be commended for exercising our independent judgment as to the terms in this and make positive suggestions or not accept it. You know, this is a very personal decision that people have to make, and it is affected by what the threat is, what the proposal is, what the alternatives could be, and what the consequences could be. And I would hope that in the 3 years of this, ISIS will be defeated, and that we can go on to our future instead of being in a warlike posture from '01. I don't think that this description here puts us in anywhere near the posture we were in Afghanistan and Iraq, though. I hasten to add, this is a limitation of presidential. Yes, ma'am.
Just to follow up on that question of the limitation, you and other members have said you want to limit the ability to deploy ground troops, but the
Yes.
Republicans control both houses of Congress, and they want to remove those limitations. Given that political dynamic and the fact that this is going to be marked up by Republican committee chairmen who want to take away those limitations, how likely is it that anything can pass?
Well, it's going to be hard, and I would hope that we could find common ground to have bipartisan support for how we protect and defend the American people. But that takes work. It's called legislating. You probably may don't recognize it because it hasn't happened quite that much around here. But it is, and when we had the vote on going into Iraq in 1991, December, the debate was in January 91. When we had that debate, it was one of the best debates in the Congress. It really is important for people to express their knowledge of again, our national security interest, what our options are and make choices about it in a way that is values-based, does not question anybody's motivation, but instead tries to find common ground to be united as we protect the American people. It's a very, very, very serious responsibility to authorize the use of force and put our men and women in uniform at serious risk. And that is taken very seriously by members.
Madam Leader,
Yes.
moving down to the Horn of Africa on this as well, with the events in Yemen in the past few days, what does that say about the administration's policy, and does that show that there has been a problem there or something that the U.S. and this administration should have been more attentive to?
No, it says that what's going on in Yemen is a difficult situation. It's, we were working with the the government of Yemen to fight the forces of Al-Qaeda, the manifestation of Al-Qaeda in Yemen. They're now gone. I'm pleased that our personnel were able to get out of Yemen safely, but there's a lot going on in the world, and I think, I don't know what would happen in terms of Yemen as we go down the road, but any of these incidences points to the fact that we need to have probably no geographic limitations on what we're doing. That is not to say, and what they're talking about here is protecting our embassies while we're out of there. We're talking about rescuing American personnel. Those are kinds of examples that we're talking about when we talk about not enduring offensive grand combat operations. That's what they're talking about. So what we have to be talking about is how do we maintain the authority of our government to go in and rescue, go in and defend Americans and the rest. And that's what's relevant about this. The Middle East is complicated, and there, as you know, and as I'm sure you know, in Yemen, there's apart from Al-Qaeda, there are differences of opinion, it's tribal and all the rest, and we can't correct all the world's problems, but where they are a threat to us, we have to have some ability to protect the American people. Thank you all. Don't forget, in case you were forgetting, that what is this Sunday, the last day to sign up for ACA? Here it is. Sunday marks the last day of the current open enrollment period. Under the Affordable Care Act, enrollment has been extremely successful and exceeded expectations. So go to healthcare.gov for life, a healthier life, liberty, the freedom to pursue your happiness. We're very proud of the Affordable Care Act. Thank you all very much. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, Valentine's Day coming up. As a nice Valentine's Day, you can take your loved one to sign up for the Affordable Care Act.
I thought you were going to tell us about Ghirardelli chocolate.
That too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.